everyone, welcome to Meeple Bits. Thanks for joining me for this setup and how-to for the Foundations of Rome expansion and modules. In this video, we're going to only cover the Roads of Fortune expansion, its additional variants, as well as the original Foundations of Rome modules such as monuments, trading and stealing, etc. We're not going to cover any of these setup or how to play the base game, so please refer to that video, link in the description below, if you're just starting out. This video dedicated exclusively to how to play those modules as well as the expansion. So with that, guys, let's go ahead and jump right in. Welcome to Foundations of Rome, Roads of Fortune expansion. In this setup, we're going to go through what you're going to add or remove while playing the game. Assuming you understand and know the normal setup rules, we're going to take it from that point. Set up the game as usual, including any of the modules you want, whether that be trading and stealing, monuments, or otherwise. Then, deal the cards as normal to the players. However, if a player were to receive an edge card, that would be an A, a 1, or in this 4-player game, any 9s or the I column, you're going to want to swap that back into the deck, drawing up a new card. If it again is an edge card, put it back into the deck, draw it again. We've got another edge card since it's the A. We're going to put it back in the deck and draw again, until all players have their starting cards that are not on the edge. Once complete, put all the edge cards back into the decks, shuffle, and put out the era decks as normal. Next, collect the new road boards. There's many to choose from. You want to remove any that do not apply to the modules that you have. Example, this one is for the monuments. If you're not playing with the monuments module, discard this from the game. Go through and make sure that you only have what modules and standard ones that are going to apply. Notice this one applies to any of the expansion for the roads game. Once you've done that, you're going to randomly draw 4, placing them on the edge of the board. For purposes of direction, this is the orientation of the board: north, south, east, west. And lastly, give each player the monument token of their color. The other change is you're going to play the game as normal during the rest of the time that you're going through the eras. When you reach the end of an era, you're going to insert an additional step in advance of the commercial building scoring. So once you reach the end of the deck for each of the eras, insert the following. Resolve each of the boards starting with north, east, south, and lastly, west. Each player is then going to calculate their influence on each of the directions of the board. Determining the influence is each player is going to count the total size of all the buildings that are on the edge of the board. That is their total influence. What that looks like is that if a building is simply touching the edge with at least 1 square, and it's a size 3 building as an example, that is 3 influence for that direction of the board. If there's a tie with influence, the player with the lowest letter breaks the tie, followed then by the lowest number. Once you have influence calculated, those players may choose any of the slots or actions that are applied to that edge board. In this example, the players may swap any 2 lot markers, swap one of their buildings with one from the board of the same size, or simply take 3 victory points, or in each of these take 1 victory point or 2 victory points. A player is going to take their monument marker, placing it in the location that they've chosen, and then decide if they want to do any of the actions. In this case, they can swap any two lot markers. Then the next players that have influence would be able to apply their monument tokens. In the event that a player has no monument tokens, they can simply use one of their lot markers if available. If they have no lot markers available, they cannot place a token even if they have the most influence on that direction of the board. In the event that there's no location to put a monument or lot marker, resolve the tile starting with the most influence in the same way. For example, in this tile, if ending era 1 and 2, players may gain 2 money for each building on the edge. So if they have one building of size 3, that's still just 2 money. If they have 3 buildings of size 1, that's 6 money. Lastly, Roads of Fortune includes a couple additional things. Alternate monuments, as denoted by the Roads of Fortune icon in the lower right. This changes the monuments and their bonuses and requirements. You can either replace all the monument cards with these new edge monuments, or mix and match if you choose, or not use them at all. This is an alternate mode to the game, is not required if using monuments with Roads of Fortune. Roads of Fortune also includes population tokens as an additional module. These population tokens are dual-sided, and some of the edge boards will indicate whether or not you're going to use population tokens. Example, this board is for population tokens. If using this module while playing with Roads of Fortune, you would have the option to put this one or not. You would have the option to use this board in addition to the other boards that you may want to either assign or randomly shuffle from. And that does it for the Roads of Fortune expansion. Monuments module. In the Monuments expansion, start by drawing the Monuments card from the Monuments deck. You want to draw cards equal to the number of players plus 3. So in this 4-player game, as an example, we would draw a total of 7 cards. For simple display, I'm going to reveal 3. Each monument has a requirement. In addition, the players must own all the lots that that monument makes up. So example, if a player were to want to build Regia, there is no requirement for it. However, they must own 6 lots to build on. If a player wants to build the Temple of Vulcan, you must own 4 or more lots worth of commercial buildings on the board in any combination. Monuments follow the same rules as overbuilding. Example, this 3 monument can be overbuilt with this 6 monument. Or this 3 monument could be overbuilt with a 4 normal building. If you're overbuilding monuments, return them back to the supply so that they may be drawn by other players in the future. When building a monument, always take the card into your hand so that you can keep track of any additional bonuses that they may apply at the end of the era. If a player builds a monument, they're going to assign their monument token on top like so that you can keep track of ownership. If ever swapping a monument, you would of course return this back to your supply. The rest of the game is played as normal. The monuments introduce additional communal buildings that everyone has an opportunity to purchase. This completes the Monuments module for Foundations of Rome. Trading and stealing, or trading or stealing. The Trading and Stealing module can be introduced individually or together. In this module, let's address trading. Players have the opportunity to make voluntary trades with each other. The primary requirement is that when making a deal, each player must include at least 1 lot in the trade. Trades do not have to be equal, So a player may trade, for example, 2 lots for 1 lot. Make sure you always swap the cards if making a trade. Players may only trade empty lots where they have not built anything. If you have a building on a lot, you cannot deconstruct that building to then trade a lot in the trade. You can include silver. You can include, if playing with the stealing module as well, favor tokens. Stealing. The stealing module introduces these favor tokens, which are two-sided, including a 2 and a 4. If a player on their turn were to steal a lot from another player, example, this D9 lot, if a player were to steal this from another, they must have at least 1 token with a value of 2 still on its face, and they would give it to the player that they've stolen from, flipping it to the 4. That player that they have just stolen from now has 4 victory points. However, they cannot use this as a token to steal in the future. You may only steal if you have a 2 token. When playing with this stealing module, all players will start with 2 favor tokens. And that's it. That's adding trading, stealing, or both. The objectives module. The Objectives module offers an additional opportunity to gain victory points during the game. These are introduced in either hidden objectives or public objectives. In a hidden objectives game, players are dealt 2 objective cards, choosing one and discarding the other. This becomes their hidden objective for the game. As long as this is met before the end of the game, the players may then be awarded the victory points at the end of the game. In a public subjective game, you may introduce objectives equal to the number of players. So in a 4-player game, there would be 4 public objectives available, viewable by all players, and obtainable by all players. In the case of a tie, all players who achieve the objectives and are tied are friendly, so they would all receive the victory points. Example, if 3 players had the fewest residential buildings, then all 3 of those players would have completed this objective. And so ends the objective module. Invocations module. In this module, you're going to include these invocation cards into the era's decks. After initial setup where all players have received their initial starting 6 deed cards, randomly take 3 invocation cards, shuffling them into each of the 3 era decks. They of course should be face down, making them appear as though they are also deed cards. These invocation cards are treated like deed cards, so they would be dealt out and purchased exactly as a deed card would. So if this card were the furthest left, it would be purchasable for 2 coin. Once an invocation card has been purchased, players would take this into their hands or into their play area, keeping it face down until it's used. Once it's used, you would place it face up into your deeds deck. All deed cards can only be used on your turn unless otherwise specified. Example, this card may only be played while using the Objectives module. So you would discard this if not playing with Objectives module. This card, for example, you may discard this card when you take a buy a deed action. Immediately take a second deed of a lesser value without paying its cost. So once a player were to purchase this card, having it in their area, they use the card, take the action, placing it then face down or face up in their deeds deck. Some of these invocation cards do have victory points, which are awarded at the end of the game. These points are awarded even if the invocation has not been used. That completes the Invocations module. The Player Role module. Player roles are dealt out 2 to each player at the start of the game, each player then selecting 1 role for the game, the other is discarded. Once all players have chosen their role for the game, all players reveal the role that they have selected. In the case of Entitled, at the start of the game, You may select a monument and put it in your play area until the end of the game. Only you may build this monument. If you build it, gain an additional 2 victory points. So make sure that you are selecting the modules or the roles that additionally go with the modules that you've chosen to play with. Players are only going to have one role throughout the course of the game. So ends the player role module. Wheel of the Consul module. This module is a cooperative module. This module may only be used in a 2 to 4 player game. If playing the Circes solo or a 5-player game, this module cannot be used. The only additional module that may be introduced while playing the Wheel of the Consul module is the Monuments module. No other modules may be used. You're going to set up the game as normal, assigning a player color that is not in use to the Wheel of the Consul. The Consul player begins the game with 5 victory points, but 0 population. Take the Planning and Ready card, placing the planning side face up in front of the first player. That player will control the Consul until the end of the first era. Next, you're going to take all of the Consul, building tiles. They come in sizes of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Shuffle all the tiles in each of these face down, off to the side or next to the player color that's been assigned to the Consul. There are then 3 difficulties to choose from in the Wheel of Consul module. The standard difficulty, the Consul starts with no deed cards. In the hard module, they would start with 2 deed cards. Then you're going to place the building token on each of the associated lots. If the lots, though, are adjacent, as in this example here, you would instead place a size 2 building token. And in the challenge hardest difficulty, so there's standard, hard, and challenge, in challenge they would receive 4 deed cards to start the game. If any of the lot tokens, or if any of the lots are next to each other, you would place the largest possible building over those tokens. During gameplay, players are going to take turns as usual. After the starting player finishes their turn, they're going to flip the Consul card to the ready position. Then you're going to perform the following steps on behalf of the Consul. Take the leftmost card on the deed board. That deed now belongs to the Consul. Slide the deed cards down as normal from the deck and pick a new card as normal. If this new deed doesn't expand one of the areas that they may already own, example, if they had this built, if it were not, say, G8 or H8, you would put a single token, otherwise you would upgrade the building to the next largest. If at any time a face-down pile becomes empty, take the discarded tokens and shuffle them to form a new face-down pile. Afterwards, flip it back to the planning side. Special rule reminders when dealing with the end era scoring. Every 2 silver icons that the Consul has on commercial building tokens increase the minimum deed price by 1 silver. So the farthest left becomes 3 in a case that they only have 2 silver on the board. For population scoring, only the player with the most population receives victory points from the population track. All other players receive a victory point penalty equal to the difference between their own population and the player with the most population. That player does include the Consul, so if the Consul, as an example, is not the leading player in population, they too would receive a penalty. During the end of an era, in addition to the normal end of era cleanup, pass the Consul card and the Consul control clockwise to the next player. Winning and losing. After the final scoring is complete, the players win together if each player has a higher score than the Consul. Otherwise, the Consul wins even if a single player has fewer victory points than the Consul. And that ends the Wheel of the Consul module.
Hey guys, so I hope you enjoyed that setup and how-to for the expansion to Foundations of Rome and the different modules that are available. I hope you found the video helpful. I'm not going to give you a long drawn out opinion about which modules that I prefer. That'll be in a separate video, but I hope you found this one helpful, guys. If you've enjoyed the video and you like the content, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. I do appreciate the support as always. And until next time, guys, thanks so much for watching.